Welcome to this deep dive.
Good to be here.
Today we're digging into something pretty interesting. It starts in a very, well, almost random place, a little bookstore.
Right, yeah. Small town, off the beaten path kind of place.
And it develops into this surprisingly layered look at human nature.
Definitely. And our source for this is a set of notes from someone named Joseph Lavant. He wrote down these encounters he had.
So the story kicks off with Lavant. He's on a road trip, apparently. Just stops at this bookstore.
Through browsing, not looking for anything specific.
But he gets chatting with the manager.
Yeah, and she seems pretty interested in, what he does for a living.
So Lavant mentions he writes observations about life, just things he notices.
And that's when things take a bit of a turn, doesn't it? Unexpectedly.
Oh, absolutely. Because right then, a Catholic priest walks in.
Timing, huh?
Perfect timing. He'd booked the store's meeting room for a group he runs.
And the manager, she's clearly quite taken with Lavant, maybe a little enthusiastic.
You could say that. She immediately introduces Lavant to the priest. Says he's a writer, reflects on life and living.
Which Lavant notes is kind of a half-truth.
Yeah, he found it funny how quickly writing things down gets turned into professional writer.
Happens all the time, but, it caught the priest's attention.
It did. They chat for a bit. The priest admits he's actually a little short on material for his group that night.
And, just like that, he invites Lavant to come speak.
An impromptu invitation. And Lavant, apparently he's comfortable speaking in public, so he just says yes.
Yeah, accepts right there.
So our mission, really, in this deep dive is to unpack what Lavant wrote about that evening.
And what happened afterwards, the conversations it sparked.
Exactly. It starts with what seems like a simple moral question, but it peels back some layers pretty quickly.
Reveals some maybe uncomfortable things about us.
Right. All sort of building up to this really sharp question. Whose child is it?
It definitely goes places you might not expect. The insights are quite striking.
So let's jump to that evening. Lavant's at the front of the room.
About 25 people there. A real mix, he says. Teenagers, older folks, everyone in between.
And the priest is right there in the front row.
Given the audience, the setting, he decides to tackle something head-on. Moral inconsistencies.
Specifically using deeply held values as the frame.
Right. And he doesn't really hold back. He talks about what he sees as a human, inability to truly reject violence and killing.
Even when it directly contradicts core beliefs.
Yeah.
He uses Christian values as his example in this case.
And then he lays out his own position, pretty provocatively.
He says violence and killing are just fundamentally wrong, full stop.
Under any circumstances, that's his stated view.
Now he writes, it was partly to make them think sure, but also genuinely what he believed.
And the reaction, how did the room take that?
Instantaneous.
Yeah.
And very revealing, according to his notes.
Okay.
Almost immediately, a teenage boy hand shoots straight up.
Ah, okay. Here we go.
And he asks that question. The classic dilemma.
Let me guess. What if someone's threatening a child?
Exactly. So what would you do if a man held a gun to a child's head and threatened to kill him?
The big one. What did Lavant say?
Well, that's the thing. He didn't answer directly. He actually turned it back to the room, asked them.
Oh, interesting move.
And the response, he describes it as overwhelming. People just started shouting.
Shouting what?
Almost together, like a chorus. Kill the man! Kill the man!
Wow. Really? That immediate?
That immediate. He did it with a quick show of hands, and yeah, killing was the dominant answer. Just instinct, maybe?
Wow. Lavant mentions seeing the priest's face during this.
Yeah, he notes the priest looked pretty shocked by the outburst.
And the boy, the one who asked the question.
He was just quiet through all the shouting, watching the adults, observing. So once it calmed down a bit, Lavant turned back to the boy.
Okay.
Said something like, now we've heard everyone else. What would you do?
And this is the moment, right?
This is the moment. Lavant describes it like a light suddenly switching on.
So what did the boy say?
So simple. He just said, I'd protect the child.
I'd protect the child.
Just 4 words. But Lavant stresses in his notes, this kid was the only one in that whole room who really got the core point.
The actual objective, not killing, protection.
Exactly. Lavant felt there was nothing else to add. The boy nailed it.
That's pretty profound for a teenager in that situation.
Right. Lavant even wonders if the boy fully grasped the depth of it himself.
What do you mean?
Like, even if, in that terrible moment, you had to kill the man to protect the child.
Okay.
That act of killing doesn't suddenly become morally right. It might be necessary, unavoidable for protection.
But it's not, good.
Precisely. It's not something to celebrate. Lavant suggests it should be met with deep regret.
And you'd have to somehow make peace with that regret afterwards.
Yeah. It shifts the whole thing from just kill or don't kill to the intent protection and the internal cost regret.
That's a really key point there. The objective is protection. And even if violence becomes necessary, there's a moral weight, a regret tied to it.
Exactly. But, okay, the story doesn't end there in the meeting room.
Right, there's the follow-up.
Lavant's telling a friend about this later. They're at a café.
And he sets up the scenario again. The man, the gun, the child.
Yep. But he doesn't give away the boy's answer first. He asks his friend, "What would you do?"
And her response.
She thinks for a second, and then gives an answer that Lavant felt was basically a more detailed version of protect the child.
Okay, so she got the core idea.
Yeah, she felt good about it, like she'd landed on the right thing.
Then what happens?
Then, pure chance, another friend walks into the same cafe.
Oh, you gotta ask him too, right?
They couldn't resist. They retell the whole story, pose the question to this second friend.
And he thinks about it too.
He pauses, clearly considering the dilemma.
But his answer is different.
It's not even an action. It's a question.
Yeah.
And it just cuts right through.
What did he ask?
He asked, "Whose child is it?"
Oof.
Yeah. Whose child is it? Lavant writes about watching his first friend's face fall as that question just hung there.
Just like the boy's answer lit things up, this question, it revealed something else.
Totally. Another layer peeled back about, well, us. Human nature again.
Because suddenly there's a condition, right? A qualification that wasn't there before.
Exactly. That immediate gut instinct to protect suddenly gets complicated, maybe even conditional.
Based on who the child is, or who we think they are.
Is this child one of ours? That's the implication. And that's kind of the second big insight here, isn't it? How quickly basic empathy, that protective urge, can hinge on perceived connection.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable to think about. Lavant wanted to just brush it off, right? Hope it was just a one-off weird question from that guy.
He did. He wanted to believe it was just an anomaly, an unfortunate slip.
But then he looked around.
Looked at the wider world, what was happening, how people interact.
And he saw it everywhere.
Yeah. He describes it almost like a widespread infection in the notes.
This attitude manifesting where
politics, social media, entertainment, the news. He saw it as this mastery of sorting people.
Putting people into boxes, categories.
And then devaluing the boxes you don't see as yours.
Right. If they're other, somehow lesser, then their suffering doesn't matter as much.
Or it's acceptable, ignorable, sometimes even dismissed entirely. Again, it's important we stress these are Lavant's observations from his notes, his perspective on the patterns he was seeing.
Sure, his interpretation of events he witnessed or read about.
And we see versions of this playing out, as he describes it. Maybe obviously, maybe subtle.
Like walking past someone in need on the street.
Or just scrolling past horrible news stories online without a second thought.
Changing the channel when something uncomfortable comes on.
Yeah, avoidance. Compartmentalizing.
And then the really tough part, it can escalate to actually causing harm or just standing by, passively letting it happen.
And Lavant is honest about himself here, which is interesting. He admits, even with his strong moral stance against violence,
he still catches himself doing it.
He catches himself doing that internal calculation sometimes, that whose child is it? Question pops up in his own head. How much should I care? What's my responsibility here?
It's a hard thing to admit, I guess.
So this whole journey, starting from that bookstore, it really highlights this tension, doesn't it?
Definitely. On one side, you've got that immediate, almost tribal reaction, kill the man.
That raw, maybe defensive instinct.
Yeah.
And on the other side,
that simple, pure instinct the boy showed. I'd protect the child, the core goal.
But then the friend's question lands like a bomb. Whose child is it?
Yeah, and it just shows how fast that empathy, that protection can get qualified, conditional.
How easily we seem to sort people, devalue them if they're not us, which Lavant saw just playing out all over the place.
The power of the boy's answer is its clarity, its focus on the real goal. Protect innocence.
And the friend's question. It reveals that uncomfortable truth about how connection, or perceived lack of it, messes with our sense of responsibility.
Lavant gives a lot of credit to that unnamed teenager.
Oh, absolutely. He says, in a room full of adults, he was the one who actually got it.
His question exposed something in us, and his answer showed what we could be.
But the thought that Lavant leaves us with, the one that really hangs in the air from these notes, That's the real challenge, maybe.
Yeah, that final line in his notes on this whole thing, it's quite something.
What was it again?
He writes, "We all better pray we're not someone else's child when our own time of need comes."
Leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It really does.